Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's edition, I want to talk about the Eritrean Biniam Girmay. When I woke up this morning, I saw one of the commenters put in there from Kicker's Toy that he asked, hey, how about a little bit of information on Bini? And I replied back to him, I said, I can't really do anything about Biniam Girmay because I haven't really seen a whole lot of information. We've seen him racing okay throughout these classic campaigns. He hasn't been fantastic, but he has been in the bigger groups behind. And then, of course, at E3 Saxo Bank, we saw him getting dropped near the very finish. So he has some form. If you're making it into the last 50 guys at E3, you know you got some fitness, and then it just looked like the legs fell off a little bit. I covered Velbogem on yesterday's Beyond the Coverage, and I talked about how many knuckleheads were out there, and Intermarché was one of the biggest of all the knuckleheads throughout Velbogem when they had 5 guys in there, but none of them rode for Biniam Girmay. Now, when I'm talking about it and I'm explaining that I wasn't happy with those results, we see them attacking going up the road while you still have Mads Pedersen and you still have Mathieu van der Poel, the two great leaders and great favorites going in to get Velbogem up the road. And I just couldn't see how Hugo Page could bridge that gap. But I could see how you put 2, if not 3 Intermarché guys on the front with some help of the other teams, especially Soudal Quickstep that had a sprinter with Tim Miller in that finishing group. And then you look at Bora. Bora had guys already on the front. Ineos had guys on the front. I mean, we had a host of reasons why Intermarché should put some guys on the front when we're talking about Biniam Girmay, because when we look at his past history from last year, he won stages at Tour of Swiss. He beat Wout van Aert in that stage that he won at Tour of Swiss. And then we go further back, well, he won Velbogem in 2022. And along with that win at 2022 for Biniam Girmay, when we look at stage 10 of the Giro, he beat Mathieu van der Poel in the sprint on stage 10 of the Giro. That same year in 2022 when he won Ghent. We go fast forward up now to 2023. It's been a quiet start, but not too quiet. He went down the Tour Down Under. He did Tour Down Under, did the Surf Coast, which he won, and then the Great Ocean Race, which I think he was top 20, 25, a top 25 there. And so it hasn't been a miserable year, but we haven't seen the team a whole lot backing him. Possibly in Velbogem when we're coming down to that last 35 kilometers. Like I said, if they put their team on the front instead of sending Hugo Page and other riders from their team attacking, maybe he gets that motivation, that spark is lit, and he goes in and he realizes that he sees his teammates on the front drilling at 100%. All of a sudden, he gets a little bit more motivated. They catch the front 2 guys up there, Mathieu van der Poel and Mads Pedersen. Now it's a 100% win opportunity at Velbogem. You might see a different finish at a Biniam Girmay when we're talking about Velbogem on Sunday's race if it's for the win instead of a 3rd place. Sprinters are a little bit, touchy-feely in terms of I'm going 100% for the win, bumping bars to bars. I could crash, I could end my whole season here, but this is for a classic win versus, well, we're not catching Mathieu van der Poel, we're not catching Mads Pedersen up there. It's only for a podium. I'm making a $1.5 million contract here, and I got a multi-year contract with Intermarché. He's from Eritrea, like I've already told you, so that kind of money can go really far. And you start thinking about 3rd place. Your teammates haven't really been working on the front for you intelligently, and you're like, wow, they don't want to work for me. I'm a little upset. I'm not going to give 100%, and I'm certainly not going to give up my 1.5 contract here with a crash for 3rd place at Velbogem when I should be winning races and know that's the most important thing. Now, he's ranked in the top 90 of the UCI right now, so we know he's a good quality rider. There's no doubt about that, and I wouldn't be bringing him up here on Beyond the Coverage if I didn't think he was a great rider. When I look at Biniam Girmay, I think he's a rider much like Mads Pedersen. I think he can do the classics. I think he can get over the climbs. I think he can win. And the only difference between a Mads Pedersen type rider and Bini is that Bini doesn't seem to have the same kind of power to be explosive up all the climbs, be in the wind more often than a rider like Mads. Mads has that ability to be attacking on the climbs, still recover, and still do a very, very high quality sprint at an end of a 250-kilometer race, where I think Biniam is a little bit more, a tad weaker in terms of on the bigger climbs, but has the same kind of speeds as a Wout van Aert, and that clearly shows when we look at his Tour of Swiss stage win when he beat Arnaud Démare and he beat Wout van Aert. So you know he has pure speed, and you know when he can get to the finish and beat Mathieu van der Poel like he did in 2022 at the Giro, that he has that kind of same level as the Mads Pedersen, but where Mads is stronger on the climbs and more aggressive and able to be in the wind more, he's also more steady throughout his whole season. When I look at Binny, the biggest thing I see about Binny is his form is always up and down and dipping. So when I looked at the article here in Cycling News that I'll post up so you guys can read it, it's from his director sportif, Visbeck, added a little bit more information into this 23 season. This year, like I said, he did the Tour Down Under, but then after that, he went over to Asmara, the capital there of Eritrea, where he lives. Now, he spent some time over there and he came back to Europe in February. His director, Visbeck, said that Rein Tarme went over there to give him a training partner. Now, throughout my career, I could have training partners and not training partners. It really didn't matter to me unless the training partner was a guy that I knew so well and was so comfortable with that when I'm training 7 days a week with him, that he's willing to do the training that works for me, or when my training is different than his, he's okay with me just turning over, looking at Rein Tarme and saying, hey, I don't need 4 hours today. I feel a little tired. I want to do 1 hour and I'm going back home. As long as my training partner is okay with me changing the plan of what we normally planned the night before, then I'm okay with having a training partner. And I love having training partners if they're okay with that. Now, the difference when you start thinking about Asmara, I checked it out, looked on the map, Google Map, checked out the training. Looks like it's incredibly dry, much like it is in here in Bend, Oregon, where we're high desert, gets about the same kind of rainfall. And it's a safe country when we're talking about Africa. It is hard to get into. Super high altitude at 7,500 feet, so you know he's at altitude training the whole time when he goes back home. The main difference, though, when he's at home is that, of course, when you look at Visbeck's comments, he says, well, hey, we tried to get mechanics, we tried to get soigneurs over there, but it's difficult to get the visa and get him in there, so the best we could do is Rein Tarme. Now, there is one little hiccup in there that I see in his training that could possibly be causing a little bit of ups and downs in his training, and we see that Visbeck says that he spends a lot of time at church on Sundays, so he wasn't training on Sundays. That was his old training. This year, he said they compromised and they added a little bit of training in between services and lunchtime hours so he could spend time with his families. Now, I understand religion, I get it, and I understand if that's the most important thing to you, as it should be if you're a really religious person, that you're going to give up on that day of Sunday. But I also know if you give up Sunday once a week, and there's 4 weeks in the month, that's 4 days of training. 4 days of training is half a week. So you're giving up half a week when there's only 4 weeks in the month. That's a lot. If it's a 5-week month, you're giving up 5 days of training out of that whole month, which can affect your form dramatically. Because sometimes I always, throughout my training, thought that the weekends were the times when you can get the best training. The roads are always empty because everybody is at service, or the big football game is on if you're training here in the U.S., or the big baseball game, or it's a Super Bowl game, or whatever it happens to be. The roads always seem to be a little bit quieter on the weekend. And when I'm in the U.S., when I was growing up and living in San Diego, California, those were the days when you can go do the group ride, so you can get in a 100-mile ride. I could do 20, 30 miles to the group ride, do a 60-mile group ride, do 20 miles or 30 miles home. I could have 100, 110 miles in my legs, and mentally it was super easy on my brain because I wasn't really thinking that training by myself is a little bit harder. But when you're on the group ride, you're not thinking about, oh, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, I want to be home, I got other things to do. So the weekends are always fantastic days when you're growing up in the U.S. to get in big miles. I would assume it's the same everywhere around the world too, where Saturday and Sunday is the days you can do the group rides and make that training ride a little bit easier. Also, one other thing I want to point out, when you're giving up a Sunday and it's always on a Sunday, my training always went by feeling. So whenever I was feeling good, I trained good that day. If I get up and I get on the bike and I'm not training and I'm not feeling good, I cut the day shorter. If I cut the calories wrong the night before and I'm too depleted of calories that day, I thought about doing 100 miles, maybe I turn it into a 2-hour ride and I stop at 7-Eleven halfway in the ride and I ride back home. So if you always block off a for sure Sunday, and say you needed the rest on Saturday, but you know you're going to service on Sunday, you turn Saturday in a ride that you should have been going full gas on, but you didn't feel good, but now you're thinking, I have to go full gas Saturday because tomorrow I'm taking off to go to service. So then all of a sudden Saturday gets a little bit too overcooked. Sunday, you might not get that much of a rest because remember, the Eritrean, Biniam Girmay, when he shows up at the services or any kind of public attention at all when he's in the when he's in Asmara. Once he shows up at those, everyone's going to want to take pictures with him. Everyone's going to want to shake his hand. So, of course, he's increasing the possibility that he can end up with some kind of sickness, either the flu. Of course, there's COVID out there still. So that's all possible reasons that can cost him some more form. But everything, when I look at the Eritrean, he's 23 years of age. It looks like he could easily be a rider like Mads. And again, when we look at the comment from Wiesbeck, he expects Biniam to be in that first group right behind Mads Pedersen, right behind Wout van Aert, and right behind Mathieu van der Poel. And he's almost in that group. So it looks like Intermarché is very happy with Biniam's performances throughout the multiple years that they've had him under contract. He's been winning races in 2021, big races in 2022, like I already listed, with Ghent in the Giro stage. 2023, he was still solid, winning the stage at Tour of Swiss, and of course down in Valencia in the early parts of the season. And then he had the crashes up in the Classics, so that would explain that hole in the 23 seasons up in the Classics. But now we're coming here in 2024. He's been a little bit off the mark. Not a lot, but just a little bit. But keep an eye on Biniam Girmay, because once we get into the next couple races, there's only really 3 left for the guys who can't climb, because then we're going to get into Amstel, we're going to get in Flèche Wallonne, and we're going to get in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which is not an ideal course for Biniam Girmay. So he's got 3 big races left. He's got Dwars-Door-Vlaanderen, he's got Tour of Flanders coming up, and he's got Paris-Roubaix coming up to get that big solid result out of the Classics. And he's right there on the cusp, where if he can get that training right throughout this week of training here and racing, all of a sudden he comes in the Tour of Flanders. We might see Biniam Girmay at the front of the group going for a big-time victory if there's any kind of tactical errors back there from Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel and Mads Pedersen. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next Beyond the Coverage real soon.